Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the committee, and I'd like to, on behalf of all of us on the committee, thank those of you on the panel who've testified today. The ongoing opioid addiction crisis is something that has harmed every single community, has affected every state. Just my small state of Delaware lost more than 300 people who died in drug overdoses last year. And what we're trying to do is to strike the right balance between making sure that people who suffer from persistent and chronic pain, like Ms. Chambers, can get access to appropriately prescribed and managed opioids, and those who are abusing them or misusing them are appropriately held to account. And so striking that balance is the purpose of our hearing here today, and I'd appreciate a few pointed answers to some simple, hopefully pointed questions. To Attorney General Frosch. Delaware, under the leadership of our Attorney General, Matt Denn, recently enacted new regulations that allow prescribers to better monitor each opioid prescription, and that limits an adult from receiving a first-time prescription for more than 7 days, except under exceptional circumstances. So, and that's led to a 12% decrease in the number of opioid prescriptions just since April 1. Shouldn't we be looking at some of the positive, innovative work that's being done in states like Delaware?
Yes, absolutely. A number of states have prescription drug monitoring programs. They can be extraordinarily effective, despite the fact that laws like that have been enacted in Delaware and across the country. We still have this tidal wave of opioids washing across, and those are important steps forward, but we have a lot of work that remains to be done.
So help me, Attorney General Frosch, Dr. Katzion, if you would. The DEA's use of immediate suspension orders has dropped, but other enforcement tools like orders to show cause have increased. Are these other tools sufficient to combat the misuse or misprescription of opioids?
I don't think they are. I mean, and you only have to look at the results to come to that conclusion. DEA has essentially had the same tools for 4 decades, and they have not been sufficient to overcome the wave of opioids that has washed across the country. So I would say not. Now, you know, the prescription that I would give is holistic. We not only need effective law enforcement, interdiction of illegal supply, but we also need treatment. We need prescription drug monitoring. We don't have nearly enough treatment beds in our country. You know, we're not making forward progress, or we're making progress, but it's incremental. It needs to be much more rapid.
I agree with you. Dr. Katzion, what else do you think DEA should do, or what else can we do as a committee and a society to address the significant problem of opioid addiction?
I think the answer is the balance that you spoke about. We need to have a balance between access but effective law enforcement. And to the prior question, we haven't had time to analyze the data the committee presented today, but if you look at the data at an overview, the DEA's taken actions in other areas to compensate for the inability or their concern about trying to take an ISO. So there has to be some balance there as well. ISOs should be restricted to the most serious, egregious cases where patients are going to be killed if that pharmacy, that distributor, that doctor continues to operate. In those cases, the standard worked. You saw by the data the amount of times the ISOs were used were very limited. So we think restoring or eliminating that data, that new standard, is a means that would quickly address the issue and give the DA that important tool back to use that in very limited but very serious situations.
Mr. Gray, you represent distributors. There's been a lot of concerns expressed today on both sides about the Ensuring Patient Access and Effective Drug Enforcement Act. How do you think we can fix it? And how do you think we can improve and sustain that working relationship that you just talked about with the DEA to crack down on inappropriate overprescribing behavior, and to make sure that those who are genuinely in pain, like Ms. Chambers, are able to access the prescription opioids they need?
First, let me say that the DEA, I think, does agree with us. There needs to be some definition of imminent danger. If it's not the right one in the law, then we should fix it. But as I said, let time see how that works out. And it may a rush to judgment. I agree with someone on the panel alluded to. Is probably not the best way to go, the most judicious way to do legislation. But that being said, I personally believe we can talk about the mechanics of law enforcement and pain management, but from a personal experience, and this just happened to me in the last 96 hours. I spent 24 hours in a major hospital here to have this shoulder bone. I now understand pain. I never understood persistent pain. Since August 3rd, I have had pain every day in my body, move in different places, from my shoulder down through my arms, and it has been miserable. 2 surgeries, the most recent last Thursday, to fix this bone for the 2nd time, and then scope out this shoulder. And in the hospital, in that 24-hour period, I was asked no less than 5 times this question as I sat down wherever I was going in. Could you describe your level of pain? And I looked at these people and I said, this isn't about the pain. Pain will take care of itself. Well, you need to give me a number. What's your pain? So I began making up numbers. And then when they sent me out of the hospital after 24 hours with a prescription of oxycodone, we couldn't get it filled. My insurer wouldn't pay for it. And so it's like, well, you know, so I paid for it, and I used about 5 of them, and that's it. And I'm off it now because it's not good stuff. But it did immediately after surgery. But you know, it's a systemic problem beginning with the medical community, if you ask me. I'm not picking on them, but the bottom line is there has become a pattern in the medical community that pain management makes healing go faster.
Mr. Gray, let me just re-ask my last question, if I might. You concluded with what seemed an intriguing possibility, that distributors and the DEA could work more closely together to genuinely identify bad actors and to allow the continued delivery of needed pain medication to those who legitimately need it.
I have firmly held, if the DEA, you know, opened the door and said, let's work with you as a registrant, not as a criminal, as we used to be defined by someone in that agency. We were called criminals. If we worked as a registrant, I actually believe between the resources and the access of information that my members have, and then the bigger picture information DEA has, this shouldn't be a problem to identify the bad players, in my opinion.
I appreciate your testimony, but you know, as you represent those who struggle with pain chronically and daily, those who are charged with law enforcement and protecting our constituents, hundreds of whom are dying, thousands across the country, and those who are pharmacists professionally trained to dispense appropriately and distributors. We have to get this right. We have to work it out, and we need a sense of urgency about it, because there are literally people dying and people suffering needlessly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.